Firstly, could you tell me the role that the British Embassy has here in Vietnam?
Most people, when they think of an embassy, they think this is a building or an organisation that represents a government, and so it's about the British government talking to the Vietnamese government, and that's true, but that's by no means everything that we do. We also talk a lot to business. We are helping bridge between British business and Vietnamese business to increase trade, and we also facilitate discussions from non-governmental partners, whether that's schools or universities, the education links, or whether it's charities, social organisations, and of course at the end of the day, the reason why many of you might end up calling on an embassy is we help British citizens. Like other embassies here, there are lots of foreign citizens in Vietnam, and this year has been a tough year as everyone's faced COVID. So the British Embassy is also there to help British citizens in Vietnam.
How does the mission of the British Embassy support the goals and the overall SDG goals that the UN has set for 2030?
The SDGs are also very important to the UK. We're very committed to international development, we're very committed to multilateralism and working through the UN. And here I would highlight 4 or 5 areas where we're really keen to have an impact. The first is around climate change. The UK is the chair of the COP, that stands for the Conference of Parties, COP26 conference, which is trying to increase the level of ambition to reduce greenhouse gases. And we're working with Vietnam on that agenda. Similarly, clean energy is a related issue there. Clean energy, there's so much potential in Vietnam for solar power, but also for offshore wind. And the UK at the moment is the #1 country for installed offshore wind capacity globally, but we think that Vietnam has just as much potential, a long and very windy coastline. Another area that's really important is gender equality, and we work with the Vietnamese government on a range of issues. So for instance, today I've been talking to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of National Defence about women, peace and security, because all the evidence shows that when women are involved in peace and security, then it's more stable and better decisions are made. And you may have seen Vietnam has sent peacekeepers to South Sudan under the UN. That includes women peacekeepers, and that's a really important signal to send around gender equality. And then finally, I would say on the poverty agenda, Vietnam has been one of the most successful countries in the world at reducing absolute poverty over the last 20 years. It's very impressive, but the work is not complete, so there are issues around certain communities, certain geographical locations, and we are trying to help. You mentioned the Prosperity Fund. We're trying to make sure that Vietnam's very dynamic economic growth is spread across the population fairly and evenly.
So what kind of organizations are you working with and in cooperation with for multilateral aid that you're bringing to Vietnam?
We're working a lot with ASEAN, with Vietnam as the chair of ASEAN this year. So particularly, for instance, we've been working on a theme which is called better regulation. So governments regulate the economy to make sure that businesses can succeed and grow, but that they follow the rules, they have good economic policies, that they have good social and environmental policies. So working with Vietnam in ASEAN, we can spread practice about how to have good regulation. Or another example of multilateralism is we're working at the moment on the response to the terrible flooding and landslides in central Vietnam. And the UK has committed funding, £500,000, to the International Red Cross appeal. So the International Red Cross is collecting funding globally, and the Vietnamese Red Cross is delivering that locally. It's another good example of how we can work together.
So what really drives you and makes you really passionate about the work you do in Vietnam?
I think there are 2 things that get me out of bed in the morning. The first is I'm curious, and I like exploring and understanding a new country, and here in Vietnam, nothing gives me more pleasure than to get on my bicycle, get out of town, ride through towns and villages in Vietnam and see what's happening. And the amazing thing is to see how even in small villages, in isolated places, there's building going on, a new school, a new clinic, and you can see that there is investment going into the social infrastructure. Now, I'm not saying it's complete and finished. There's a lot more work to do, but I like to be able to see change in front of my eyes, and Vietnam is moving very fast. The other thing that's important to me is to promote freedoms. That's free trade. That's freedoms in terms of values and human rights, and it's also the importance of security globally. So Vietnam is a country that's chosen free trade. Vietnam has 13 free trade agreements with different countries. We're negotiating, the UK and Vietnam are negotiating a free trade agreement at the moment. I find that fascinating. Also, I like to talk and promote human rights and values, so that might be media freedoms. In Vietnam, there is a lot of space to talk about different issues, but there are also some issues which are sensitive, and I think talking to the Vietnamese government about the value of media freedom is really important.
How exactly are you going to be bringing that sustainable and long-term development for the citizens in the central and center of Vietnam that have been so horribly devastated by the floods that have recently occurred?
So you're absolutely right that there are going to be several phases in this response. The first phase, we have to focus on relief, because there are hundreds of thousands of people affected. Many have lost their houses, many have lost access to clean water, many children can't go to school at the moment, many people can't get to their clinics, healthcare clinics. So that's the first phase of relief. But then the second phase is recovery. As you say, for it to be sustainable, we need families in the central region to be able to rebuild their lives, get back to work, get back to school, and to have the prospect of sustainable work and social support that will enable them to fully bring back their communities to life. So we're working, I mentioned, with the Red Cross to provide relief, but we're also working with other organisations for the medium term. So this comes back to the point about making sure that the government sets the right framework for small business to be able to recover, because most small businesses in Vietnam are run by poorer sections of the society. That's right, and it's really important that they can recover. And also, it's linked to environmental sustainability, because one of the causes of the serious flooding, not the only cause, there are weather causes and so on, but one of the causes is the deforestation, which has meant that the natural resilience to rain is reduced. So we need to look at reforestation projects so that in the future, when there's heavy rain, we won't have more of these devastating landslides.
So how exactly do you support freedom of speech in Vietnam?
So I think that we have a framework. There are international agreements and treaties on human rights and on political rights, and Vietnam has signed up to those treaties, as have other countries, and there's a process through the UN where we can exchange information, help each other to match up to our commitments. No country is perfect, no government gets all the policies right all of the time. Governments need to learn, and the Vietnamese government is, in my experience, willing to listen, willing to have a dialogue, and willing to implement new policies. So that's the way we approach this. We want to have frank conversations about difficult issues, but in the knowledge that we're all part of one international community.
Moving on, what exactly is the British Embassy doing to really empower these women within the Vietnamese economy and overcome these cultural challenges that they may face?
On many indicators, Vietnam is doing pretty well on gender equality, and the labour force participation of women in Vietnam is very high, which shows that women's contribution to the economy is valued, and that they can enter the great majority of workplaces and spaces. However, we also know that there are a few really challenging issues. One is domestic violence and sexual harassment at work, and the other issue is the gender imbalance at birth, where there are 116 boys born in Vietnam for every 100 girls, and that's because parents are taking the decision to select the sex of the child because there's a tradition and a cultural factor that is really important to have a boy. So culture is deeply seated, and culture is very important for any society, and a lot of things related to Vietnamese family culture very powerful and very positive, and the dynamism and the value on education and so on. But I think it's right that we have a conversation about why is it necessary to have sex selection. I think we would certainly see that the right way forward is to value boys and girls equally in the family and in the workplace, and that will be a secret of success for Vietnam in the years to come.
Could you elaborate on the Prosperity Fund and its impacts?
We have a range of programs under our Prosperity Fund. We have a program on healthcare, which is looking at digital health, so helping the Vietnamese healthcare system to use digital solutions. We have a program on climate and energy, which is looking at helping the spread of renewable energy within Vietnam, particularly rooftop solar and offshore wind. I'm about to get an electric car. I've got rid of my old large-engined petrol car. I'm about to start using a fully electric car. We also have a program on smart cities, and in Vietnam there's still a process going on where people are moving out of the villages into the cities, and the cities are not quite keeping up with the population volumes. We know that a city as big as Ho Chi Minh City or as Hanoi needs a good public transport infrastructure, and we're all waiting for the opening of the first metro lines in both those cities. So smart transport, making sure that ticketing is integrated so that people can easily make one journey using a bus, a metro and a boat, and the user experience is simple for them. Those are the kinds of projects that we're working on with the Vietnamese government.
How exactly have we seen the influence of the British embassy within the battle that Vietnam is having that's going on with the COVID situation?
So this year we've had a focus on the framework for vaccine development, because as we know, the only sustainable way to deal with COVID will be to find vaccines that can protect us. And normally the preparation of a vaccine takes around 10 years from the start of research to the licensing and safety checks to use of the vaccine. We need to speed that process up. We haven't got 10 years to fix COVID. We want to do it quicker. So with the Vietnamese government, we're talking about how you can improve the role of government and the regulatory functions so that you can guarantee a safe vaccine and good distribution in a shorter time period. So we've had a series of high-level seminars on those issues, and Vietnam is changing its legislation to speed up the vaccine process.
What are some of the factors that have been really helpful towards Vietnam within their battle with COVID?
So I think Vietnam has a lot of experience from the last 20 years. Obviously SARS was here nearly 20 years ago, and Vietnam learned about public health for an infectious disease through that. I think also there's been all of government response using not just healthcare but police, military and so on to make sure that people follow the rules. And of course Vietnam has chosen to close borders, and that they've done that efficiently and with good quality quarantine procedures in place. So I entirely agree, Vietnam's done a great job, but the challenge is not completed. Of course, Vietnam needs to get to a stage where it can reopen borders. Vietnam needs international trade, international tourism, international student mobility. So Vietnam's also facing, like every other country in the world at the moment, the impact on those sectors. It's very tough.
What exactly are some of the issues that you may face getting your work done and your message out within Vietnam?
Like in any relationship between two governments, we don't see eye to eye on everything, and we're trying to influence each other to change each other's approach. The UN Security Council is a very interesting issue. The UK and Vietnam are both members of the UN Security Council at the moment, so we are constantly talking about very challenging issues like how to resolve the conflict in Syria, or how to push forward on climate change goals. And as I say, we have frank conversations, we share information, we try to persuade our Vietnamese colleagues about different ways to approach these issues, and they do the same with us, and we learn and we compromise as a result.
Finally, how might some of the citizens in Vietnam have seen your impact that the British Embassy has had in general?
We have an advantage. I mean, I have been in the diplomatic service for a long time, 25 years, and we've always tried to communicate what we do using traditional means through the newspapers or on television. But nowadays we have much more ability to communicate directly to people using social media. And I should say that some of the things which have been most important during my time here have involved direct communication with the Vietnamese public. A sad but important issue. A year ago in the UK, 39 Vietnamese people were found dead, having been trafficked from France to the UK in a lorry. That was a tragedy. It was a shock to everyone in the embassy and to me personally, and we wanted to obviously show our sympathy and condolences to the families here. But we also wanted to send messages that can try and help this from not happening again. So I have had a lot of communication with normal, average Vietnamese people on this issue through my editorial newspaper articles, through my Facebook page, and it's a proper debate about why do people put themselves at risk, why do they want to leave, and I can understand the economic factors involved and the social factors involved, but I want to show that A, they need to be aware of the risks, and B, that there are other options out there. So that's an example of a tough issue where I've communicated directly with people, and human trafficking is a real challenge for globally. People want to migrate for legitimate reasons, for jobs and education and so on, and that's really important that they know the risks, they know the rules, and that they follow the legitimate channels.